It's like, how do you rent something in, like, Eastern Virginia during a drought?
And also, anybody's ever done that trade, and we've all done it. We've all bought places to rent out. It's a fucking nightmare. The actual effort you need to do to rent something out versus owning an asset like Bitcoin, where you virtually have no effort. The difference is extraordinary.
Bitcoin's not going to spring a leak. There's not going to be a property tax. You don't have a maintenance charge. It doesn't spring a leak. It doesn't burn down. There is no eminent domain.
You don't have to evict your tenants. Nothing.
Yeah, all sorts of things like that. It's unique, Raoul, in this respect. Property is superior to a security for so many different reasons. If you own property from a custodianship point of view, it's superior to a security. It's, there's no way that a mayor, a senator, a congressperson is going to stand up in front of Congress and say, my Apple stock is a superior store of value to the US dollar. You can't do it. It violates every ethics rule, right? It violates, if it doesn't violate a whole host of laws, it violates ethics rules. Plus, when you're promoting a security, you're taking counterparty risk, right? You're dependent upon the acts of the board, the acts of the CEO. You've got the domicile. Gary Gensler's on television today talking about how the Chinese don't allow us to audit Chinese auditors, and maybe you can't trust a company in China. There's all sorts of issues with the security. So name me the properties. I got gold. Gold's got no velocity. I got timberland. Okay, so the average person, how do you buy $10 million of timberland and harvest timberland? I got natural gas rights. That's great, but if there's no pipeline going to natural gas, how do you sell your natural gas? Right? I got Picasso's. Oh yeah, that's not a manipulated market, right? Art, right? Like, it's a very esoteric market. How many people can buy $37,000 or $37 worth of, like, rare art? Silver? Diamonds? Okay, what's the property that I can trust, right? And the answer is Bitcoin, because it is truly decentralized and it is homogeneous, and yet it has been anointed as property. It's a safe haven. The IRS says it's property. The SEC says it's property. And I'll make one last point, Raoul. It's fungible property across time and space. For example, 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin today. And if I decompose it to 100 Bitcoin, 1 million Satoshis and put it back together again, I've still got the same thing. And at the same time, 1 Bitcoin in 10 years is going to be 1 Bitcoin. It's going to be the same quality. It's going to be 1/21 millionth of all the monetary energy in the network forever. That's not the same with your house. If you bought a lake house on Lake Tahoe, to Airbnb it out, in a decade, it may not be as high a quality as today. You have to invest huge amounts of maintenance to maintain as new. Even if you do that, it's still going to be dated in 30 years. There's no way to avoid the property. Maybe you bought the most beautiful lake house in Lake Tahoe, and in 30 years, someone builds a condo next to it because some politician rezoned the land to your left and your right. And nobody wants to stay in your lake house if it didn't sink into the water, if something else didn't happen, even if you're the perfect landlord. And so this idea that I can have a pure, pristine property in time and space that I can decompose and recompose, that I can oscillate, that I can program, this is unique in the history of the world. There's nothing comparable to this. And we have not developed this. This is property that anybody with a computer can develop. I can write a computer program to move this stuff around. Some kid in Zimbabwe can write a computer program on an Android phone that can create value from your digital energy or your digital property. They're not going to develop real estate in New York City. Nobody, and your timberland in wherever it is, Montana, is not going to get developed by some intelligent hacker in Singapore. So you're tapping into something which is incredibly powerful, inconceivable before now. Most people still they don't have their hands around it. Digital energy is the technical metaphor that says this is the technical imperative for Facebook and Google and Apple and everybody with a computer, programming capability or a CPU chip. Digital property is a macroeconomic metaphor. $100 trillion is going to flow out of real property to digital property. Digital money, that's the political metaphor. Digital money is the most controversial. I prefer to stay away from it.
Don't use the term money. It's much easier.
It torques off all the politicians and all the mainstream and everybody that doesn't understand it. And they just get all worried, it's going to topple the government or it's going to undermine the status quo. So if you leave that and you say it's digital energy, it's just energy with a half-life of 1 million years that you can oscillate at 60 megahertz on a mobile phone for 8 billion people. It's digital property. It means every middle-class person can store their life savings in property and get yield on it from the highest bidder everywhere in the world every second of the day, and they don't have to stress out about the property burning down. When you understand those two things, you step back and you say, what am I going to do? And the answer is, I'm just going to own it. Just going to own it, man. Just buy it and let everybody else figure the stuff out. 100,000 entities are going to come up with a way to utilize digital energy or develop digital property. Just own it.
Yeah. And because network adoption, it'll just keep working. It's magic. So here's another thing I want to think through, because I don't really know the answer to this. Humans are humans, and we're going to create leverage. And we talked about the monetization or the financialization of assets. And we see it at retail levels. You talked about this 20x, 100x. But we're going to see it at scale again, because that's what humans do. Is that going to change some of the properties of what this looks like in the future? Are we going to introduce some of the risks and some of the downside that it's not really there in this marketplace now?
I think that the number one critique right now of Bitcoin is it's volatile. But I don't think it's volatile because it's digital property, digital energy, or because of all of the constructive uses of it. I think it's volatile because there's too much leverage in the offshore crypto exchanges and the altcoins. I think that what's happening is someone buys an altcoin with a 10x lever, it moves up 20%. They cross-collateralize into the second altcoin, and then they somehow collateralize that, or they tie that into Bitcoin. I think that 20x and 100x leverage in the offshore crypto exchanges has been driving the volatility in Bitcoin. And I think that as we come off of that, I think that we're not going to see 20x leverage. Coinbase doesn't offer 20x leverage.
No, but the investment banks will. Because they can't help themselves, because that's where they see money is, I'm going to give somebody else, a bigger financial player, a hedge fund, for example, this kind of leverage.
Well, I mean, like we just saw the equity swap issue with Archegos play out. But I can tell you that I've traded with all the wirehouses for 30 years with hundreds of millions of dollars. They never offered me an equity swap. Okay, it's not very common to be able to get an equity swap, even if you have a $500 million portfolio. So 99%, maybe 99, everybody I know, they're not trading with equity swaps. The highest amount of equity or the highest amount of leverage you see in conventional markets is like 50% or 2x leverage. And so I'm not really concerned about that. The future of Bitcoin is transitioning into the public markets and the institutional investment markets where the leverage is normally going to be 2x or less. And I think that it'll be delevered more than it'll be levered. I think that if you look at the velocity of the crypto markets, people are taking 10x and 20x trades, and those things are being marked to market every minute of the day on the weekend with forced liquidation. The reason you get volatility is when you put 10x or 20x through something that's got, if I have a $2 billion market cap and $30 million of this stuff is trading, and I lean on it with 20x leverage against something, something else, then I'll move that number. If I'm cross collateralized and I'm able to go back and plug that into Bitcoin, you'll actually drive some Bitcoin volatility. But, the volatility is coming from the crypto markets. It's not coming from conventional users of digital property or traditional institutions.
And also what's very different about this market is if you take leverage in the New York Stock Exchange or the futures market, you have margin. Somebody calls you up and says you need to pledge more capital. The crypto markets are the opposite. It's like, we control your margin, we'll liquidate you immediately. You get no choice. So you kind of know what you can lose. In futures markets, you don't know what you can lose, because in the end, if you can't pay your collateral the next day, your margin the next day, you're in shit street.
Yeah, I think the conclusion is, look, if you look at where Gensler is going, and where the regulators are going, they're going to regulate the stable coins. They're going to regulate the DeFi exchanges like Uniswap. They're going to put more regulation on the offshore crypto exchanges. They're going to put more regulation on the onshore exchanges. And as they do that, one of the consequences is leverage is going to get taken out of the system. The obscene amounts of leverage comes from, DeFi combined with offshore 20x, right? And if you go onshore, it's kind of hard to generate a 200x leverage play. In fact, as I said before. So you remember what happened when BitMEX went offline?
Yeah.
When they brought charge against I was trading in the market, Raoul, and so like looking at it every minute of the day, like I very, very trading in it, like having the skin flayed off your back if you saw something go wrong. Like I watched Bitcoin go from 9,500 a coin to 10,500 a coin in 3 minutes, like while I'm on the phone. And then I went to bed and I was short. I was trying to buy it at 9,500. I was short and I went to bed, and it came back to me by 3 p.m. the next day. But I damn near had a heart attack, right? Like literal heart attack. When BitMEX went offline, I watched half the velocity disappear. Sorry, half the volatility disappeared. Like you could literally see, like the volume got cut in half and the volatility came way in. And so I think that you're seeing progressive waves of normalization as these markets get less levered, and I think that that's going to continue over time. I don't know that it will end tomorrow, but obviously my long-term thesis is you look out 2, 3, 4, 5 years, as more and more large institutions hold this with less and less leverage, the volatility on Bitcoin decreases.
Yeah, and